Hi, friends. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Josh. And right now, we have a fantastic bonus episode for you. We are fortunate enough to have the chance to chat with award winning writer of film, television, and the stage, Gary Goldstein. His writing credits include Hallmark's 2012 Hitched for the Holidays, and most recently, 2022's Lights, Camera, Christmas, which, if you listen to our most recent episodes, you will know we were huge fans of. Jennifer.
Big fans, big
Big
fans. Not just
fans.
saying that because we're talking to Mr. Gary. We
Woo.
were fans before this opportunity presented itself, but man, now we're super fans.
Super fans. And I think, Jennifer, this might be, I don't want to be presumptuous, but this might be one of the better ones at the end of the season for us, I think. I don't know. Stay tuned.
So
Anyway,
it's gonna have some longevity in our rankings, I believe.
I think so. Anyway, Gary has released his second novel, The Mother I Never Had. And in our interview with him, you're going to hear Gary talk about his creative process, his approach to developing characters, especially those in these holiday movies, and the ins and outs of getting an idea actually from his brain onto television.
So let's unwrap it. Hello, Gary. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Hey, Jennifer and Josh, happy to be here. Thanks for asking.
Happy to do it. So, first off, Gary, I would just love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in writing.
I've been, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a film critic. I wanted to write for a daily newspaper and review movies. And that was the kind of kid I was. And that didn't happen back then, though I did write film reviews for my high school newspaper, my college newspaper. I ended up getting a job. I was living in Boston at the time after I graduated from college, and I got a job working doing movie publicity. I did publicity for a chain of movie theaters in Boston. And that kind of parlayed itself to another publicity job working for Universal Pictures in New York. And then I was brought out here by the company. And as I kind of inched up in my 20s, I started all this really, really early, but as I sort of started inching up through my 20s, and I was doing this work that I really enjoyed. And I guess I had a knack for it, but I kept having this gnawing feeling like, I really want to get back to writing. I was just so inspired by so many at that point in time. There's lots of great TV on, and I was just seeing so many movies that I loved. And I don't know, something just hit me. I think I had done everything I felt like I wanted to do. I realized I didn't want my boss's job, which was really kind of a revelation for me. I just literally dove into the shallow end of the pool. I left my job and I started writing spec TV scripts. And that was at a time where you could actually get freelance work on most network TV shows. They had to hire at least two outside writers a season. And remember, this is at a time where there were four networks. Fox, it was relatively new. This is a long time ago. And uh, and there were maybe 22 episodes of these shows, F 22, 23. I mean, they were massive orders, and staffs were not quite as big as they mushroomed into over time. So they needed some extra help. So from my spec scripts, I got an agent, and I got set up on a lot of meetings at these TV shows, and actually started getting work. I got work as a writing freelance episodes of a bunch of sitcoms and 1 hour show and all of that. And then I was like, well, this is good. I'm enjoying this. This is happening, but it's like, I kind of need to expand more because I really wanted to write movies. And I felt writing TV might be a way into writing movies, but it really wasn't. So I kept my hand in TV and I kept writing TV spec scripts and things like that. But I also started to write screenplays, and I took a great writing class out here that still exists. It's called Writers Boot Camp, and I learned how to write a screenplay. I took it a couple of times, wrote two different screenplays, and those screenplays started to get me a lot of attention in the movie world. I ended up teaching that class as well for about 7 years, and that was great because I had never taught before, and I didn't know if I had it in me to teach, but I loved it. I taught, over 7 years, a couple of thousand students altogether, and that really really honed my chops as a screenwriter and as somebody who could pitch and somebody who could really had story structure in their bones. from teaching it so much. So it was a fantastic experience. Had great students, met great people. Um, and I ended up starting to sell some screenplays. And I had a couple of films made. I also sold a script to 20th Century Fox. And that went into development, and it turned into many, many different things except an actual movie. But it was a great experience, and it got me on all these lists to get work doing other rewriting work, going into pitch and stuff like that. So it was a really great door opener. And this, you can see all of these things. And I say this for people out there watching, listening, is that sometimes your career, particularly as a writer, it goes in sort of semi-logical steps, and other times it really doesn't. And I kind of fell in the middle. I kind of like it wasn't like one thing always led to another, but in the bigger picture, you could see this trajectory. So I started really getting into the screenwriting world, and then at the same time, I had a little downtime at one point, and I said, you know what, I love the theater. I've always wanted to write a play. I'm going to write a stage play. I had an idea of something I wanted to write. And one Memorial Day weekend, I just sat down, and over the course of, I think it was just over the weekend, maybe 4 days, I wrote this play, this comedy. And I didn't know what I had.
Really?
It was sort of a little semi-autobiographical, not really, but some of it was. And we ended up, a friend of mine was running a theater, a small theater here at the time. And he said to me, have you by any chance written a play that we could do a stage reading of? We're starting a Sunday night stage reading series of plays. And I was like, I just happen to have a play that I don't know if it's any good. I don't know what to do with it. He said, well, let me read it. Reads, he said, this is
Wow.
great. Let's do it. So we do this stage reading in front of 100 people on a Sunday night, and it was gangbusters. I mean, it was like I never had the experience. I mean, I had written sitcoms for TV, and I'd be at the audience tapings and things, and you'd hear laughs and things, but also those were kind of like, it was my scripts, but then other people punch them up, so it's a different kind
Right.
of thing. This was like, all on me to either succeed or fail. And the audience it was like foot stomping laughter, which just blew my mind. And because I thought it was funny, but I don't know, you think you're funny, and who knows if anybody else thinks you are.
We're always a
Anyway,
little
so
biased on our own
a
humor.
little,
Yeah.
yes, a little bit. And so then it went so well. The theater came to me and said, we'd like to produce this play. So I was like, fine, I'm not going to stop you. So in very short order, we had a phenomenal run of the play. It ran about 10 weeks in Hollywood. It was a play called Just Men. It was a father-son comedy, and sort of a romantic comedy as a part of it too. And it was really, really fun. So that opened up a couple of new doors for me as well, and the play got me into a lot of meeting rooms for writing TV and movies, which was good. And then I continued to write specs. I continued getting some freelance script work, and then but I also continued to write spec screenplays. Now this was at the time. I feel like I should have a timeline going along here. This is at the time that movies, studio movies were kind of starting to really visibly shift from the romantic comedy, high concept comedy, character comedy, star-driven comedies, star-driven dramedies were kind of the bread and butter of theatrical films, during this period of time, the 90s, 2000s. And you could kind of see it shifting more and more into more of the, supernatural horror, sci-fi, the big tentpole movies. It was before
Mhm.
Marvel and that, but it was like they were looking for action movies and crime dramas and stuff like that. That was starting to be more. So what I was writing was needed a little bit less. However, at the same time, so dovetailing this, my agent sent a spec romantic comedy I wrote at the time called The Wish List to Hallmark, because they had started to do romantic comedies. This was 2009. They were starting to amp up their romantic comedies, and they were looking for basically good romantic comedy screenplays that maybe didn't sell as feature films, but would work really perfectly for them. What was not as unique to the theatrical world would be more unique to them. So the wish list, which they bought and I rewrote for them, and we turned it into, we Hallmarkized it, as I call it. But basically, the movie stayed about the same, except taking out some language and some innuendo and stuff. It basically stayed the
Sure.
same. If you've seen it, it came on in 2010. I don't think it reruns anymore, but it was with Jennifer Esposito and David Sutcliffe and Mark Declan, and it was about a woman who's just fed up with her dating life. She makes a list of what she wants in the perfect man, and she will accept no substitutes. Well, of course, at the exact same time, she meets the perfect man, she meets the list, and then she meets the anti-list. And it's kind of about this friendship she struck very this kind of a very kind of butting heads friendship she develops with this kind of wacky coffee barista, and at the same time is falling in love with this like perfect guy. And he's a great guy. He's handsome, and like has all this noble work that he does. He's a doctor. He goes off to Ecuador to work in the Amazon with kids. He's just one of those perfect people. But she's realizing that as much as he's a great guy, it's the empty list that's kind of opening her up and loosening her up and just kind of making her enjoy life more. Ultimately, you know where it goes. But anyway, the movie was really fun, did well. And then I got asked to rewrite a script for them, a rom-com for them, which I kind of rewrote top to bottom, and it was made. And then it just sort of, mushroomed into kind of a string of movies for them. And I ended up selling a couple of other spec screenplays of mine that I wrote, that were older scripts. One called Hitched for the Holidays, which
Yes.
I have the poster hanging here. It's not in a good place for this, but and a script called This Magic Moment, which was done about 9 years ago. And I was hired to adapt quite a few books for them into movies. I did some of the Flower Shop mystery movies, pitched some ideas to them, rewrote scripts for them. And then also at the same time, I've done a few films for Lifetime and a few other networks. And I wrote a Christmas movie that was a streaming film that ended up being repurposed for Lifetime a couple of years after that. So it's the TV movie world really became a very vital source of work for me, and I love writing rom-coms, and I think my humor is it's just when I believe I'm not a sitcom kind of guy, in terms of humor. I could write them, but it's more to me about character. And you create funny characters who are like doing something really wrong, and it's how they have to fix themselves to become better people. And the people who come into their life, the person who comes into their life that helps them become a better person, and vice versa. It sets up, I think, always a really fun dynamic and a fun conflict. So I've been able to use a lot of comedy in these films, and I think Lights, Camera, Christmas is definitely one of the more comedy packed movies that I've done for Hallmark, and certainly in the Christmas world. But a lot of it is just being able to write the banter, between the potential romantic characters, but create real people, people who are just you catch people in movies and and TV at the moment, and books at the moment that they're about to make a change, and they just don't know it, but their life is ready. They're percolating. They're ready to make that change. So that has turned into really wonderful career for me, and at the same time, more recently, last 3 years, I've written two novels, and that came out of the fact that I've always wanted to write books. I've been a big reader ever since I'm a kid. I'm always reading a book today. I'm always in the middle of one book or another, and I wanted to write a book, but it was I would say to myself, from a practical point of view, if I write a spec screenplay, let's say, or spec TV pilot, I know what to do with it. I know who to submit it to, what the process is. It's kind of my wheelhouse. If I write a book, I don't know what to do with it. And I realized, in the same way that I realized many, many years ago about writing spec TV scripts, it was really more about write the material, make it good. It will find its place somehow. You will make it happen. And it's about doing things, not focusing on the immediate and not worrying about the result. So at the end of 2019, I was reading something online on Twitter, a screenwriter that I followed, and he said, like out of the blue, he said, if you're a screenwriter and you've always wanted to write a novel, but don't think you have the time to do it, which was always me for so long.
Mhm.
Um, think of it this way. If on January 1st you started writing your novel and you wrote a single page a day, by the end of the year, or even before that, you will have finished the first draft of your novel. And I was like, okay, that's not so, all puns intended. That's not such a novel idea. But it really spoke to me. It spoke to my just sort of, you know, logical, whatever part of me is logical, it spoke to the
Right, breaking
logical
it
side.
down and taking that
Bring
first
it down.
step.
You can
And
do
I
Sure.
it.
had
Yeah.
an idea. I had an idea for a character, not a whole story yet, but I had an idea for a character that I really wanted to write. And a novel really felt like the place for it. So January 2nd, 3rd, something like that of 2020, a couple of months before the pandemic, I started a book that became The Last Birthday Party. It was titled something else originally. And I didn't have much of an outline, but I have story structure kind of emblazoned in in my bones. So I kind of could automatically kind of knew where I wanted everything to sort of go. Writing a book, even you can read a million books, but like writing a book, there's a bit of a learning curve just in terms of formatting, in terms of punctuation, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But at the end of by July, I finished the first draft of the book. And I kind of didn't know what I had, but I had a blast writing it. And the pandemic, started, everything shut down in the middle of March. So I really had more time to work on it. So I was able to write way more than a page a day, but I never, ever missed a day. I don't care. I remember I went to Las Vegas to see my family, and I took my computer with me and I cranked out a page a day while I was there. I just had to do it. It's really the only way to get anything done, frankly. If you're consistent, you can at least finish something. So anyway, I ended up getting a publisher, went through the whole process. That was another learning curve. Went through, got a publisher for it. It came out in August of 21, last summer. And so but writing the book was, its own animal. And going through the editing process, which was phenomenal because my publisher had a phenomenal editor who cut my book down from 98,000 words to 84,000 words
Mm.
and told me, I'm going to recommend all these cuts. You decide what you want to do, but this is what I recommend. I don't think it changes any story. It just makes the book fly. It just makes the book just very, very propulsive. And I thoroughly agree. And there's only one scene that she recommended cutting that was literally my favorite moment in the book.
Oh no.
And I said, I'm not cut. I can't, I just can't, I don't have the heart to cut it. She was like, fine, don't, it's fine, but it'll be fine. And I read that scene and reread it. And I was like, she's absolutely right. That just stops the action. As fun as the scene is, I'll use it for something else. And that was it. So I learned so much. And then marketing the book, it was, that was a whole other thing because you can be with the biggest publisher these days and you still as the author have to market your books. They'll do a certain amount, but there's only so much that they can do, and you have to take it upon yourself. As a former marketing executive, which was my very first, in my very first jobs, I kind of know how to publicize things, how to market things, how to just sort of write the query letters and cover letters and pitches and things like that for that. And I'm not shy about it. So I just did it. And between what my publisher set up and what I set up, we did a ton of publicity on The Last Birthday Party. And that book was about a man who turns 50. And the day after he turns 50, the day after his wife throws him a birthday party that he did not want and hated, he wakes up the next morning and she has left him.
Mm.
And because they have a fight after the party, she has left him. And in quick succession, within 24 hours, three calamities befall him, and he's just a disaster. And it's all about how this guy very unexpectedly puts his life back together in a way that makes his life better than it ever was.
Mm.
And it's a Hollywood set, romantic comedy. The main character is a screenwriter. He lives in the same area that we live in Los Angeles. But he's not me. I say that I taught that guy Jeremy in that book all the lessons that I learned the hard way. I put them through
Sure.
him. I got through all those lessons, and I give it to him. It's a really fun book. I'm so proud of it. It's really it's just such
No,
a
I'm
entertaining
I'm
book.
down right now. I'm gonna add it to my cart. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Say no more.
Um, and I've written the screenplay of it. I adapted it into a screenplay, so I'm hoping that there's a movie or limited TV series in it somewhere. So I figured, I learned so much about writing a book. I've got to amortize that. I've got to do it again. And I had an idea, although I started to get screenwriting work again, so I had to kind of readjust my schedule a little bit more. And it didn't move as fast as the first one. But it was a drama. It was a very serious story that I wanted to tell. It came from a very tiny seed of something in my past, but it's completely unrelated to me. But the seed of it came from something that I experienced. Um, and uh, and I ended up writing The Mother I Never Had, which most of the work that I've done has been, I'll just give it a little plug right here, as we
Give a
authors
big
do.
plug. Absolutely.
Big
Go
plug. There
for it.
you are. Love my cover. Um, uh, uh, Most of what I've written, my stage plays, TV movies, theatrical films, etc., have been comedies, high concept comedies, character comedies, romantic comedies. I've done some dramas, I've written some mysteries, but by and large, I'm more in the comedy space. And this is a very serious book about a very serious story. It's a mother-son story, but it's a very, very complex story. And when my editor first read it, she said, I have to tell you, you found the humor in the darkest places in this book. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that. Because I was afraid that the book would be a little heavy, a little bit of a
Mhm.
slog because it's serious. And she goes, the book flies by and it is, I mean, it's very touching, it's serious, but there's wonderful humor in it, which escapes me a little bit to this day, but I was really happy to hear that. And yeah, it's been a great experience. But and now it came out about a month ago. I've been doing tons of publicity for it. The amount of things out there, podcasts alone have just mushroomed in the last year. It's crazy. And I've just had fantastic interviews and with people. Everybody's so supportive and wonderful. I did some great book signings, live book signings here in LA at a couple of different bookstores. Because you couldn't do it last year because of COVID, and now you
Sure.
can. Bookstores are doing
Hmm.
it again, so it's been
Hmm.
great. So here I am, and fortuitously, kind of accidentally, Lights, Camera, Christmas, my Hallmark movie, aired last Saturday night, and so it's been kind of like two big projects that have come out back to back, even though I wrote them very, kind of very separately. Um, and uh, and there you have it, more than you ever needed to know about me.
No, I'm fascinated. I'm hanging on to every word.
Same here.
When
I
I
think
like
it's
what you
so
said
remarkable.
that the newest book you thought it was going to be really dark, but you ended up having some humor. I think that's life. I mean,
Yeah,
I think there's always you can find humor and some levity in any kind of situation. That's
yeah,
part of what pulls you through it too. So I think
right.
it's super important.
Yeah, but to me, I really want to honor this story. And there were moment there was, sometimes, I mean, there have been plenty comedies about funerals and things like that. But
Right.
this story is just, to me, it needed to be taken really seriously. But I do have characters that are fun. I have some supporting characters that are fun. It's also set in LA, so I do have fun, with the LA, with traveling around LA in it. And my main character is a very kind of flawed guy. And he's kind of a serious, sort of sober guy, but the people around him lighten him up, and then he has kind of a little bit of a wry way of looking at things anyway. So I guess a lot of that comes out. But yeah, sometimes you just don't know what you have.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm glad you mentioned Hitch for the Holidays. I was so happy to realize that you wrote that because it's one of the first holiday movies I remember watching. It's the
Uh-huh.
first time I saw the kind of the zany let's fake date at the holidays thing
Right.
that
Yeah,
so many people kind of tried to replicate.
that was not, I mean, it's been done a lot since, but it hadn't been done very much back then. And I just love that movie. And that script is, like I mentioned, it started off as a theatrical spec screenplay. It actually got tons of attention when it went out. When my agent had sent it out back then to the studios and production companies, it got probably a better response than even things that I had sold, scripts that I had sold.
Hmm.
But it didn't sell for some reason. But because every production company that took it to a studio that ultimately passed, those producers hung with it and really wanted to find a place for it. Because it was a big New York Christmas comedy, with a couple of really
Yes.
very castable leads and supporting actors. But it didn't happen. But fortunately, Hallmark came along. They loved the script. We it didn't. I did a rewrite, but it was really much more of I think a practical rewrite than having to change a whole lot. In terms of story or character. I think it really, really maintains the humor and the character comedy of those people, and the pretend romance and the pretending to be a religion that you're not. And it was probably one of the
Yes.
first Hanukkah movies, really,
Mhm.
TV movies that included Hanukkah, which is great. So yeah, and it doesn't rerun anymore on Hallmark, but it does stream on Hallmark now, and it is available on Peacock, because Peacock is now streaming many of the Hallmark movies, and it is available on that. So
Cool.
yeah, I
Yes.
love that movie. I'm so glad you brought it up.
Well,
Yes.
and
Now I've watched it a few times over the years. I'm gonna have to watch it again this
Yeah,
season
yeah.
in honor of
yeah,
you.
I'm gonna have to watch it too. And
Yeah.
spoiler alert, Gary, we absolutely loved Lights, Camera, Christmas. And
Oh, great. Thank you.
I would love for you to give us a sense of what that process looks like for you in terms of developing story. One thing
Mhm.
that Jennifer and I really try to do when we're taking a look at these movies and reviewing them isn't just to talk about the highs and the lows, but we really sort of try to hone in on, does this at the end of the day tell a good story? Are these
Mm.
characters that we can cheer for, believe
Yeah,
in, and really see this sort of thing happening? I'd love for you to sort of talk our listeners through what that process looked like for you
sure.
with this film, developing the
Absolutely.
characters, the storytelling mechanisms that you use, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, every movie is different, and how you get through every script is different. They all have their own trajectories. They all have their own stories. In this particular case, I sometimes come up with a title first. I wrote a play that was on in LA about 5 years ago called April, May, and June. And I just came up with that title one day, and I was like, wow, that's a good title. I don't think it's ever been used. What can I do with that? And I said, well, there are three women named April, May, and June, but who are they? And
Mm,
ultimately it became a story about three sisters who are going through this rebonding period because after their mother dies. And it's a little bit like Crimes of the Heart, like that kind of thing.
mm,
And I've done that a lot. Sometimes I've heard an old song title that's like, well, they've never used that as a title. It's a great song, but it's a good title. And so sometimes I just figured it out from there. Lights Camera Christmas was one of those situations where just the title hit me. And I was like, I love that title, and and I checked, it was never used as a movie before. I think it was used once as that, I don't know, it was like there was a short series about Christmas and they called it, I don't know, it was something, but it
cool.
was not a movie. And so I said, okay, what do I do with that? Well, Lights, Camera, Christmas. It's obviously, it's about a movie. So I realized I had never seen a movie about the making of a Christmas movie.
Mm,
There have been certainly movies about the making of movies and movies coming to town, et cetera, et cetera. But I couldn't remember. Anybody out there, correct me if I'm wrong, that I didn't remember a Christmas movie, a TV movie, a Christmas movie that was about the actual making of a Christmas movie. And I figured that's fun, we can have fun with that. So I pitched it to a company in Canada we were looking to do something together, a company called Lighthouse Productions. Um, and they loved the idea. They took it to Hallmark. Hallmark thought it was a great idea. Over the course of time, we got into development on it, and I did, quite a few outlines. And the thing that Hallmark wanted to do, and it was really, really smart, was that they liked the story that I created, but they said, "Is there a way we can tell the story a little bit differently?" Because they're trying to do things different, make some differences and things. So I came up with four different ways of telling the story. And they liked all of them, but the one they liked the most was what we have, which, if people haven't seen the movie, is it opens. The whole movie is told in flashback from the premiere of the movie. It's a streaming film on a fake network called Dazzle Plus, the premiere screening is in a theater, and there's a Q&A with the cast and crew for a huge audience after the screening is over. And every time a question is asked, and the answer becomes the flashback of how the movie was made and how everybody came to have the experiences that they did. But the flashbacks are chronological. So, you had a couple of different things going on here. That was a bit of a juggling act. And then it ends, at the end of the Q&A, and we're back in the present for everything to wrap up. So that was really fun. And once we had that framing device, everything really gelled. And with any of these films, any film you write, you go through development. We work together on the outline. I work with my Hallmark executives and my producer Kevin, and we work through the outline, and we do various versions of the outline, keep mood changing, making it better, losing things, gaining things, etc., making it as workable as possible. And then at a certain point, when they feel the story is there, they say, okay, go to script. And then you write the script. And it's always interesting to see how do you write a script that really matches this outline? Because writing something and writing scenes out, in paragraph form, and narrating what your movie is about is very different than actually turning it into script form. So there are always changes that happen and things like that. But I think the first draft stayed pretty true to the final outline that I did. And then it just evolved from there. I did a number of drafts. We just sort of like I call it like it's a big your script is a big hunk of clay, and you're constantly molding and shaping and molding and shaping until you got the statue that you want. And that's kind of where we ended up. And that was it. And then they shot most of the final script, and things get edited out obviously for time, but they did shoot most of the final script. And that was it. And I'm not involved I wasn't involved in the casting at all, but as a writer, you have maybe not an actual actor, but you have types of people in your mind that you see.
Mhm.
And I just thought they cast it so well, and Kimberly Sustad was great, and John Brotherton was hilarious, and and the supporting actors are great, and also to have the subplot in it. So it's you've got the Carrie and Brad relationship, the
Mm-hmm.
primary relationship, but then I wove in the secondary relationship
The Jill and
between
Caleb.
Jill and Caleb relationship,
Yeah.
and Jill is the writer director of the movie, and Caleb is the producer. And Jill and Caleb were married, and until a few years ago when they divorced, and they're brought back. They produced many Christmas movies together in their day, and they're brought back together on this old script of Jill's that this new streamer Dazzle Plus wants to produce. They want to get into Christmas movies, and the deal is make a hit, bring this in on budget and on time, and we will make you a six picture Christmas movie deal. So Caleb and Jill, needing to get back to work because they've been out of work for a while, they reunite, in total conflict to do this movie. And over the course of the movie, it's kind of about what's the trajectory of their relationship. And it's really and it's just really fun. I was so glad to be able to have that in there, just sort of drop them in along the way. But it's all part of the bigger puzzle of movie making, and without the movie getting too meta. I think we're able to really have a lot of fun with how movies are made, what happens behind the scenes, in front of the camera, behind the camera, and then in the real world behind that. And it was just a total fun to write.
Well,
We
the
have to give you all
dialogue.
the credit because oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was just going to say the dialogue really, I thought, moved the story forward. It
Yeah.
really felt like, I told Jennifer, it felt like a big warm hug. Like it was one of these easy to watch
It's
movies
nice.
that I thought
Yeah.
just really added something. And I did love that B plot with Jill and Caleb. I thought that
Yeah.
that really added to the
Yeah.
overall effectiveness. Jennifer,
Yeah,
you
and
were going to say?
those actors were great too.
Spot on. Yeah.
The actor who played Caleb played the boss in another movie I wrote called Mr. 365,
Hmm.
which
Okay.
was retitled when it went international and on Lifetime as Forever Christmas. And he was great in that. I think he won some like Canadian award, Canadian acting award for that film, and he's really terrific. So I was so excited when they said he was going to play Caleb because he was just perfect.
I love that.
Full circle moment. Well, yeah.
Yes,
I mean, I think it's
definitely.
really a testament to you and your writing because these characters, I mean, we don't always care about the B plot characters, but in this
Mm-mm.
movie, because they are so fully formed that you do root for all of them and
Yeah, that's great.
you're
Yeah,
invested in their story, you're invested in their love and their laughter and all of that.
yeah,
So
yeah. You
kudos to
want
you.
Thank you. You want to create characters that, it's not always so much characters that people like. Of course, in
Mm-hmm.
Christmas movies, you want to like the characters, but it's very important that that in addition to liking them or rooting for them, that you relate to them. You relate to their issue. You relate to their theme. So with Carrie, people relate to realizing at a certain point in their life they've got to make a change. They've got to go for the goal. They've got to maybe move out of their town or just make things work in their town or whatever. Certainly commit to romance. For Brad, it's about, I love being the king of Christmas movies, and I've done so many of these, and they've been so good to me. They've made me a star, but I want to do something in addition, not instead of, but in addition, and take that risk. And he finally gets the opportunity to do it. And ultimately, it's like, what will he or will he not take that risk, as an actor? But he was ready to do it. Like I said earlier, you you catch characters at the moment that they're ready to change their lives, whether they realize it or not. And it's the plot that you dump them into as a writer that is the impetus for them to finally make that change, and who comes into their life to help them make that change. So that was a big that was a big thing in terms of us relating to the bigger picture of what these characters are going through. And certainly, one of the themes that I love exploring, and I explored it a lot in The Last Birthday Party in my book, is what brings people together romantically and what splits those exact same people apart years later. How does that happen? I'm fascinated by that. And how do you go from love, honor, and obey? I do. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. I can't live without you. To I can't be in the same room with you, and I can't look at you. I mean, has that really happened?
Right.
What happened? And my theory, and is it's nothing so unique, but it's just that a lot of the things that draw us to somebody in the beginning of a relationship often are the things that, if inverted, are the things that split people apart. So the things, the cool little quirks we love about somebody in the beginning turn into like these really problematic things. But what is it? And can it be saved? Can it be salvaged? I mean, my parents lived together for 29 years, almost 30 years, until they got a divorce. And so I was older at the time. I was in college when they divorced, but like just growing up around that was really something that I so experienced, and I always was so fascinated by how their relationship went from being so good to, over the years of watching them, it deteriorating. So it's pretty fascinating
It's
to me.
slow. It's not one, it's just not one thing. It's a slow
Yeah,
progression over
it's a very
time. And
slow
yeah.
progression, for
Well,
sure, for sure.
Gary, we're going to have to wrap it up because our time on Zoom is almost over
Okay.
here. But the
We're
book
cheap.
is,
Sorry.
I know, right? The book, of course, is The Mother I Never Had. And we just really want to give you like all of the kudos for a great film experience with Lights, Camera, Christmas.
Oh,
And
thank you
gosh,
so much. This
we
was
so
great.
much appreciate your times taking us behind the scenes of your process and your history.
It's
And we
Absolutely.
will look
incredible.
forward to seeing more from you in the future.
Yeah, I hope there's more to see. Absolutely.
Josh, I don't know about you, but I am inspired to go do something creative now.
The thing I loved about Gary is his ability to just take what to me seems like so unattainable and just make it seem like something I could go out and do tomorrow. Like his
Yeah.
thought about writing a novel a page at a time, one day at a time, to me is like, why aren't I writing a novel? The man is just obviously one of these creative types who just always has 17 ideas swirling up here, but his
Mhm. And they're all
ability,
good ones. They're all
they're
good
all
ideas too.
good. Yeah. And his ability to just take that and turn it into stuff for us to enjoy is just really, really great. I'm totally impressed by him.
I couldn't get enough. I could have listened to him talk for 2 or 3 more hours easy. So
Easily.
we so appreciate him taking the time to chat with us, and we just can't thank him enough.
Absolutely. And that, friends, is another episode of Do You Watch What I Watch?
Special thanks to Nick Schwartz for our theme song and to you for listening. Like our podcast? Well, you're in luck. There's plenty of ways to get in touch with us. You can review, subscribe, and tell a friend. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. Just follow us everywhere. You'll thank yourself for it later. You can leave a comment, and we're also online. When all else fails, just go to our website, doyouwatchwhatiwatch.com.
Stay tuned to your feeds. We've got plenty of new episodes coming your way. And of course, check out our website where you can see all the movies that we're reviewing. We want you to watch them along with us and let us know what you think. You can, of course, send us a voice memo or a quick video to doyouwatchwhatiwatch@gmail.com. And until we see you next time, may your days be merry and bright. Take care.